What is up, people? Ragnar the War Wolf coming at you from the Beast Within Primal Fitness. We have made it big. We are on YouTube. So, this is going to continue our recent series about the big four compound lifts. And really, we're going to go into a ton of other lifts. I'm going to break the form down for you. These videos are kind of designed for beginners who have never been exposed to serious compound lifts, but they're going to help you at any level, whether intermediate or advanced, just to get some new ideas and tighten some stuff up in your form and your technique. These are very technical lifts. If performed correctly, you're going to get a ton out of them. You're going to build a ton of lean tissue. You're going to burn a ton of fat. You're going to spike your metabolism up. You're going to get strong as a fucking horse. If you perform them incorrectly, they could potentially injure you and have all kinds of negative downstream effects. So I'm going to go through these lifts step by step by step. Today we're going to talk about the barbell back squat. Personally, I think the most important lift, if you're going to do, if you had to choose to do one lift and do no other lift, the barbell back squat is going to build more muscle tissue on your entire body than any other singular lift. So it's super important. It's also probably the least forgiving. So we're going to break it down step by step by step so you guys can dial in the form and get the most out of this lift. We're going to jump right in. If you find this video valuable, please like, subscribe, and share. It helps a ton. Thank you guys so much. Okay, so number one thing with squatting and deadlifting, bench press, it doesn't really matter all that much. But when we get into squatting and deadlifting where we're really using our feet, we're really driving through our feet, you've got to have the proper shoes. So what we're looking for is a flat sole. There are also weightlifting shoes that have a prop heel. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. That'll work too, depending on your personal levers and how your body's put together and what's more comfortable for you. But a good rule of thumb is just a flat soled shoe. So a lot of the power lifters, you'll see they wear Chuck Taylors. I wore Chucks for a long time. Personally, I'm on a wrestling shoe kick right now. They're super flexible. They don't roll at all. They just give me really good support, and I like them, and they're a little more versatile. I can do some of my other conditioning and stuff in these that I wasn't comfortable doing in the Chucks. So whether it's a wrestling shoe, whether it's a fucking Chuck Taylor, whether it's a barefoot shoe with a flat sole, it doesn't really matter. Just find a shoe with a flat sole. If I see you in the gym in the videos you send me on form and you're wearing fucking squishy soled running shoes, I'm going to pull guard on your ass and fucking beat you up from the bottom. I'm joking about that, but seriously, like, don't wear fucking running shoes. It's stupid. They've got a squishy sole. They've got no lateral support, so your ankles are fucking wobbling. Your knees are fucking wobbling. You're not able to generate any force because the sole is so squishy that you can't even, there's no proprioceptive feedback from the ground. So invest in the right shoes. You don't have to go buy a $300 pair of lifting shoes. Go buy a fucking pair of $60 Chucks on fucking Amazon. It'll work just fine. But get the right shoes. So you've got the right shoes. You got good flat soled shoe. We're ready to go. Let's talk about setup first, because just like the bench press, the most important thing is going to be your setup. You can't build a strong house without a good sturdy foundation, right? So your foundation is going to be built in the setup. The first mistake I see a lot of fucking people make is they set the trays too high, and it doesn't matter where you're squatting. This is a combo rack for powerlifting. It doesn't matter if you're on a traditional power rack, what the fuck ever. You're gonna want to set up the safety trays low enough that you can get in there and actually get the bar off and easily re-rack it. So a good rule of thumb is kind of top of your chest, bottom of your deltoid area. So if you bring your chest up to it, I'm an inch or so above my nipples. If you have big saggy man boobs, it's going to be a little higher. But either way, it's not way up here. I'm not having to tiptoe off to get out. If you're having to tiptoe off, or if you're having trouble re-racking it, then it's probably too high. So if you watch, when I come under here, I've got plenty of clearance. I can step out, do my squat, and it's easy to return. So that easy to return is super critical. You don't want to be fighting, don't want to burn yourself out on a really fucking heavy set and then have to get up on your tiptoes and do a bunch of weird shit to re-rack it. It's probably going to end poorly at some point in the future. So get this set up at the right height so that you can comfortably unrack and re-rack it. So the next thing I'll highly recommend is use the safety trays. Any gym that's worth a half a fuck is going to have safety trays with its squat racks. They're going to look something like this. You can find out where your line of parallel is, how deep you want to squat. You can set this up directly below it. So if you fail on a squat, it doesn't fold you all the way in half. The safety trays catch it. You take the weight off. You're a little bit embarrassed. Stand back up, go about your business, do another set a little bit lighter, rather than having like a catastrophic failure. I also recommend, with a super light weight like this, learning how to dump the bar. There's a technique to it. You want to kind of throw the back and throw the hips forward and learn how to dump the bar on those trays. When you start to fail, practice it with lightweight so that it becomes easy, so that when you do fail with really heavy weight, you're not going through that learning curve then. That's something we could do a whole video on. I just wanted to kind of preface that. In the beginning, just learn to use the safety trays and go light and get comfortable with this move first. Once you get to where you're stronger and you want to start really pushing it, that's where you're going to want to start practicing dumping the bar, where you're going to end up failing. So start practicing dumping the bar, and that's kind of a later down the road evolution in your squat game. So when we approach the bar here for the squat, the first thing we want to think about is our grip. So there is things to be said about a super wide grip, and there's things to be said about a super narrow grip. What's going to be really important with squatting is going to be pinching your shoulder blades together and creating a shelf of bone and muscle through your upper back to rest the bar on, so that you're not digging the bar into your cervical vertebrae. That sucks, that hurts, that's going to end up leading to an injury. So learning how to really pinch the shoulder blades and keep everything tight, it's also going to lock your back in place. If your lats are engaged and your shoulder blades are pinched together, your back's going to be much less inclined to roll and round and do a bunch of bad shit that you don't want it to do. So a really narrow grip is going to naturally squeeze your shoulder blades together just by the nature of the grip. The problem with that is a lot of people, especially men, don't have enough flexibility in the shoulders and the wrists and the elbows to safely do that. You'll see a lot of women that bench with a really close grip and they do a really low bar and it works for them because they're super flexible. And that's awesome. And if that's comfortable for you, low bar squat, there's nothing wrong with it. We're kind of talking more about high bar today. But either way, so you can go really narrow. Really wide is like if you have shoulder injuries and you just fucking physically, or you're just so jacked that you just physically can't grab the bar behind your back. You'll see that with a lot of really big guys. Then you can do a wider grip. The problem with that is you're going to have to really focus on keeping your shoulder blades squeezed because you're not going to have any mechanical assistance there. It's going to be solely your conscious decision to squeeze your shoulder blades and keep that tight. What I like and what I recommend for most beginners is somewhere kind of right in the middle. So I'm not super wide, I'm not super narrow, I'm a good deal wider than my shoulders here. I grip the bar, closed grip. Now I'm going to want to keep my wrists strong throughout this whole process. So then we come up under the bar, find a spot on our upper back, our traps here, pinch those shoulder blades together, and then we just stand up. So another mistake that a lot of people make here is they like overarch their lower back. They're like, oh, I got to keep my back flat. And instead of keeping it flat, they like hyperextend their spine. That's equally as bad as rounding your spine for the intervertebral discs and the pressure you're putting on them. So don't round your spine, don't hyperextend it, keep it neutral. This should be pretty comfortable. Come under here, keep it comfortable. Now we're going to go 1, 2 steps back. You don't need to walk 20 miles away from the racks. Literally, you're just getting back to where you can clear them. 1 step, 2 step. Once you get crafty with this, you'll just step right into your stance. Now we're here. Now I like to squeeze my glutes when I'm up at the top here because it pulls my lower back into a good position. And then I want to break at the hips first when I squat. So I'm not leading with my knees like you see a lot of people do. I'm engaging everything, bracing my core, pushing my hips back, not overarching my lower back. I'm pushing, keeping my lower back the same, and I'm pushing my hips back. And then I'm going down into my squat, standing back up. I was guided by a
compass, I saw beauty to the north. I drew the tales of many lives and wore the faces of my own. I had these memories all around me so I wouldn't be alone. Some may be from showing up, others are from...
So if you have trouble squatting to depth, a kind of a hack that I've got for you is you can take 2 of these like 10-pound weights, drop them on the ground here at your stance width, and you can put your heels on those, and that's going to make it much easier. Just by propping your heels up, it's going to change some of the levers and the mechanics in your knees, your hips, and your ankles, and it's going to make this a little bit easier to get all the way to depth. So in the beginning, that's a super good option as you build up your hip mobility. Now the goal is to squat like you saw me doing, down to parallel or even a little bit below it. Really, the deeper you can squat, the better. The deeper below parallel you go, the longer the quadriceps are getting stretched, the more hypertrophy or muscle growth you're going to experience and the stronger you're going to get. So what we don't want to see is this old bullshit. You'll see these guys in the gym all the time. That's not a squat. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely not a squat. If you're not squatting to parallel and you're doing those little quarter squats like that, that's like a rehab move. That's like if you injure your knee, that's like something a physical therapist would have you do for recovery as you're like getting the mobility back in your knees. But you're not going to get shit out of that. You're not going to grow any muscle tissue after about the first week doing that. So just don't do it. Don't worry about the weight. Instead, worry about going as deep as you can while keeping your spine flat. You're going to get more mobile and you're going to get more flexible with time with weightlifting. Weightlifting is one of the best tools for flexibility there is. Much more effective than all the weird static stretching crazes you see on the internet. Just running your body through its whole range of motion under tension and under weight, using resistance to do it, is going to increase your body's mobility exponentially. So give it time. Start by trying to get down to parallel, get as close as you can, use lighter weights, and slowly increase that depth over time. I've had clients that when they start with me, it's like they cannot physically get down to parallel without keeping their back flat, and then after a year, they're squatting ass to grass. They're touching their hamstrings to their calves on every rep. So that's because they've increased their hip mobility and their knee mobility over time. Don't try to rush that process though. So you've got these little heel props. Great tool in the beginning. Find them. Again, same mechanics. Brace the core. Push the hips back. We're sitting down. Like envision there's a stool behind you and you're sitting on it. I like that little pause at the bottom. Now, when we re-rack it, don't overthink this process. You've got something to run into, so walk all the way forward until you hit that. Now you know you're all the way forward. Bend your knees. It's easy. Don't overthink it. Don't try to like, you'll see, don't do shit like that. Just walk all the way forward until it hits the barrier in the front. Boom. Bend your knees. It's there. Simplify that process because you're going to be exhausted at the end of a set of squats. So make that part as easy on yourself as fucking humanly possible. So the last thing I want to talk about here is the angle and the position of our knees and our hips. So it's important that we maintain external rotation in our hips throughout these squats. So there's a lot of different cues you can give your body to maintain that. The best one I've ever found that works universally well on all different body types is simply try to think of being a little bit bow-legged. So this is internal rotation where our knees are caving in. We don't want that. You see a lot of people squat like that. Their knees cave. It's highly inefficient and it puts a lot of stress on your knees and your hips. So we want to keep our hips externally rotated and our knees abducted or pushed out a little bit. So the easiest way to cue yourself to do that is just go a little bow-legged here. Push the weight to the outside of your feet there. Maintain that. Drive them apart on the way up. so my knees are not caving in at any point. That's super important. Awesome, guys. Well, that about covers everything. So, number one, keep your spine in a neutral position. Number two, keep the weight to the outside of your feet, your knees pointed slightly outwards, hips in external rotation. Number three, break at the hips first, push your butt back, break at the hips first, don't break at the knees first. And number four, you're sitting back onto a stool, envision an imaginary stool behind you. You can even squat down onto a bench in the beginning if that helps you. And maintain that throughout your entire set, and you really can't go wrong. That kind of sums it up. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments, shoot me a DM. Thank you guys so much. Have fun squatting.